At my dad's funeral, I was still wearing black. My eyes were swollen from crying, and my heart was completely broken. I had just said goodbye to the man who raised me, protected me, and always warned me to be careful with who I trust. I thought the worst part of my day was over, but I was wrong. Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and don't forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved ones. As I was leaving the funeral, my phone rang. It was the building security at our condo. "Mom," they said, "your access has been removed. You're no longer listed as a resident." I was confused. My husband and I lived in that $30 million penthouse for years. What did they mean I wasn't a resident? I rushed to the building, still in my funeral clothes. When I tried to use my key card, it didn't work. I knocked on the door. My husband opened it, calm, smug, and heartless. "What are you doing here?" he asked, like I was some stranger. "This is my home," I said, confused and hurt. He gave a cold smile. "Not anymore. It's mine. You have nothing now. Your father's gone, and so is your place here." I stood there, stunned. My world felt like it was falling apart. Again. First my father. Now this? He thought he had won. He thought I was weak, alone, and powerless. But what he didn't know was that condo never belonged to him. It was a gift from my father, signed in my name, years ago. My husband never checked the deed. He just assumed everything was his, because he was married to me. He never bothered to ask questions. He just saw money, power, and a chance to control. As I looked up at the building, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just smiled, because I knew the truth, and the truth was going to crush him. You see, sometimes people play dirty when they think you're broken, but what they forget is grief can turn soft hearts into steel. And when you steal from someone who owns everything, you better pray they don't come back with the receipts. Before everything went wrong, there was love. At least, I thought so. When I first met my husband, he was the most charming man I had ever known. He was confident, well-spoken, and full of dreams. He told me he was an entrepreneur working on big projects. Every word he spoke sounded exciting and full of promise. I fell for him fast and hard. It felt like something out of a movie, romantic, dramatic, and too good to be true. My father, however, didn't buy it. He was a real estate mogul, a serious businessman who had seen people like this before, smooth talkers with nothing real behind them. He never said anything harsh, but I could feel his silence. He didn't trust him, and deep down, maybe I knew why. But I didn't care. I believed in love, not contracts. I believed in promises, not paperwork. I thought I was smarter than the world. So, I did what many stubborn daughters do. I eloped. No big wedding, no planning. Just a quick ceremony, and a lot of emotions. My dad didn't argue. He didn't fight me. He just looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Be careful." A week later, he called me to his office. I thought he was going to yell or lecture me. Instead, he handed me a document. It was the deed to a beautiful $30 million penthouse. "It's a wedding gift," he said softly, "but I'm putting it in your name only. No matter what happens, this place is yours." I was shocked. I didn't expect that kind of gift. I didn't expect him to still support me after going against his wishes. I felt both grateful and guilty. I promised myself I would never use it against my husband. I would never tell him that it was only mine, so I didn't. I let him believe the condo belonged to both of us. I let him brag to his friends about the view, the location, the price. I smiled when he called it our place. I stayed quiet when he started bringing business partners over, making big deals as if he owned it. Looking back, I should have said something. I should have drawn a line. But at the time, I thought hiding the truth was an act of love. I didn't want to hurt his pride. I didn't want to make him feel like he didn't bring anything to the table. But now I know better, because the man I married, the man I thought loved me, was only interested in what he could take. And I had handed him the stage to do it. Life started changing fast after we moved into the penthouse. My husband was no longer the man I had met during those early days. He began acting like he was born for luxury, hosting parties almost every weekend, making business deals in our living room, always chasing attention and approval from rich people who barely knew his name. He liked being seen, he liked being admired, and slowly he started acting like everything we had was because of him. He didn't ask before spending anymore. He bought expensive clothes, cars, watches, things we never discussed. Soon he started handling the money completely. Our accounts, bills, and investments were all under his control. He would say things like, "Don't worry, I've got it all managed," as if he was doing me a favor. I let him take over, thinking it was part of being a team. But somewhere along the way, I realized he was taking more than he was giving. There was only one thing he didn't control: the condo. The deed was still in my name. He never questioned it. I think he just assumed it was his now, part of his growing empire. He called it our place in public, and I stayed silent. I didn't correct him, didn't speak up, even when I should have. Maybe I didn't want to embarrass him. Maybe I still believed he truly loved me and would never use anything against me. But I wasn't completely blind. Behind the scenes, I started to feel something was off. So I began speaking to my father more often. We'd meet in private, just the two of us. He never said, "I told you so," but he could see what was happening. One day, he looked at me seriously and said, "That condo is your insurance. Don't forget that." His words stuck with me. I didn't fully understand them at the time, but something in his tone made me feel like he had prepared for this moment all along. While I was busy falling for the dream, my father was protecting me from the reality. My husband thought he was building an empire, but it was all a show, built on something that was never his. And one day, that lie would come crashing down. The man I once called my husband slowly started changing, and not in a way love could fix. He became colder, more distant. Conversations turned into arguments. Simple questions like, "Where were you?" or "Why is this bill so high?" would trigger anger. He'd snap, roll his eyes, or just walk away without answering. It felt like I was living with a stranger, someone who used to hold my hand and now barely looked me in the eye. Control became his new form of affection. He wanted to know where I was, what I was doing, who I talked to, but when it came to his own actions, everything was a secret. I started noticing things that didn't sit right. Text messages from people saved under odd names like Client A or Business Contact. The conversations didn't sound like business. There were emojis, late-night texts, and too many accidental. When I asked him, he got defensive, said I was being paranoid and insecure. Then the money started disappearing, small at first, a few thousand here and there, then bigger chunks. I'd ask, and he'd tell me it was for investments or opportunities, but there were no results, no paperwork, just promises. I didn't believe him anymore, but I also knew if I pushed too hard, he'd push back harder. I turned to the one person I could trust, my father. We met at a quiet cafe one afternoon. I told him everything. He stayed silent for a while, then said, "He's playing a dangerous game, and you need to start protecting yourself before it's too late." Soon after, my father tried to talk to him directly. It didn't go well. My husband got angry, accused him of interfering, told him to stay out of our marriage. I saw the look in my father's eyes, disappointment, but not surprise. That conversation marked the beginning of a silent war. Tension filled every room we entered together. That's when I started preparing quietly. I began keeping screenshots of messages, taking photos of bank statements, recording conversations on my phone. I created a secret email account. I contacted a lawyer, but not under my name. I used a friend's identity to avoid raising suspicion. The lawyer advised me to stay calm and gather proof, and that's exactly what I did. Day by day, lie by lie, the cracks in the glass got bigger. My husband thought he was in control. He thought I was clueless, but he didn't realize I had stopped playing the game he created and started writing my own rules. 1 week before my father passed, I found the truth I had been trying to ignore. His phone was left carelessly on the kitchen counter while he took a shower. For once, I opened it. I don't know what I was expecting, but what I found crushed me. Messages, photos, booking, all pointing to a woman he'd been seeing for months. He had taken her to restaurants I'd never been to, even bought her gifts I'd never received. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. Instead, he smirked and asked, "Why are you acting crazy?" He said I was being emotional, that I was overthinking everything. He told me I should be grateful for the life he gave me, as if betrayal was something I should accept in exchange for luxury, as if love meant silence and submission. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I kept my voice calm, my face still. I realized then I wasn't going to get the truth from him, and maybe I never had. I went to my father's house that night, needing comfort, but I didn't tell him what I'd just found. He already had too much on his mind. His health was failing, and I didn't want to add to his pain. I thought I had time. I was wrong. My father died just days later. No warnings, no goodbyes. I was shattered. The man who protected me from the shadows, the one who saw through my husband before I ever did, was gone. I didn't even get the chance to tell him I understood what he had been trying to say all along. My husband showed no real grief. At the funeral, he acted like the head of the family, shaking hands, giving fake smiles, pretending to be strong for me. But I could see it, that gleam in his eye. He knew the protector was gone, and now he thought I was alone, weak, broken, easy to control. He moved fast after the funeral, started changing access to accounts, making decisions without me, even trying to isolate me from family and friends. He thought this was his moment of power, but what he didn't know was I'd already started preparing for war, and soon he was going to learn that grieving doesn't mean defeated. The day of my father's funeral was already the hardest day of my life. I barely slept the night before, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I wore all black, simple and respectful, but my heart felt like it had been ripped out. I said goodbye to the man who had always protected me, who warned me, who loved me even when I couldn't love myself. I was numb, surrounded by people but completely alone. After the service, I just wanted to go home and breathe. I needed quiet. I needed space. So I called for my driver and headed straight to the condo. But when I reached the entrance, something felt off. The security guard, who had known me for years, stepped forward with a strange look on his face. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said gently. "Your access has been revoked. The owner updated the permissions this morning." I blinked, not understanding. "What do you mean revoked? This is my home." He looked uncomfortable. "Sir, your husband left instructions. Your keycard doesn't work anymore." For a moment, I stood there frozen. I tried my key anyway. Nothing. The door beeped red. I stared at the building like it had turned into a stranger. Then I saw him, my husband, standing just inside the glass doors, watching me. He stepped out, calm as ever, with a smug smile on his face. "Looks like you're locked out," he said. "Things change. You don't live here anymore." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice low. He shrugged. "Everything's mine now. The accounts, the cars, the business contacts. You have nothing. No one to protect you anymore." He really thought he'd won, that with my father gone, I was powerless, that locking me out would break me, but he didn't know everything. I stepped forward and looked him straight in the eyes. My voice didn't shake. "You really should have checked the paperwork." His smile faltered for the first time. "You see," I continued, "this condo was never yours. It never belonged to us. It was mine, given to me by my father before we were even married. And the deed, it's still in my name. You just kicked the legal owner out of her own property." He went quiet, completely still. I didn't need to say anything more. I turned around, walked away, and smiled for the first time in days. He thought he was the puppet master, but now the strings were about to snap. The next morning, I walked into my lawyer's office. Not crying, not broken, but calm and focused. I handed over everything, the original deed, my father's signed documents, even the last email my dad sent me saying, "This condo is yours. No matter what happens, protect it." My lawyer nodded and got to work immediately. By noon, a cease and desist letter had been sent straight to my husband. The message was clear: vacate the property or face legal action. Attached were copies of the title records proving I was the sole owner. No joint name, no transfer, just me. That same day, my husband called, angry, screaming. "You forged it! You tricked me!" he shouted. I didn't argue. I just said, "You should have read the documents before trying to take something that wasn't yours." Then I hung up. But he didn't stop. He tried to fight back, claiming in court that I had forged the deed, that my father never meant for the condo to be mine alone. But my father's lawyers, trusted for decades, stepped in and confirmed every detail. Their signatures were there, emails, voice messages. My father had made sure it was airtight. It wasn't just a personal loss for him, it became public. You see, my husband had been using that condo address to secure business loans, fancy meetings in the penthouse, investors impressed by the view. He built his image on that space, pretending it was part of his empire. So when news broke that he had no legal right to the property and that he'd kicked out the actual owner, his own wife, investors started to panic. Questions were raised. People pulled their money. Some filed lawsuits claiming fraud. One article labeled him a con man in a designer suit. He had made a living pretending he was more than he was, and now the mask was slipping. Behind the scenes, I watched it all unfold, not out of revenge, but out of survival. He tried to erase me, steal my home, and humiliate me during my worst moment. But the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface. The man who thought he could control everything was finally losing control, and I was just getting started. After the ownership truth came out, the fall of my husband's empire happened faster than anyone expected. Within days, the media had picked up the story. Headlines popped up online. Entrepreneur kicks wife out of her own condo, and CEO caught lying about $30 million property ownership. Investors panicked. They started digging into everything: his assets, his company's filings, and even his personal background. The penthouse wasn't just a symbol of wealth, it was his entire brand. Every pitch, every deal, every client meeting had happened there. That view, that address, that luxury image, it was all part of his mask. So when people found out it was never his to begin with, trust vanished overnight. Calls started flooding into his office. Angry partners, nervous shareholders, and cold lawyers. Some investors demanded their money back. Others filed lawsuits for fraud and misrepresentation. Projects were cancelled. Deals were frozen. One by one, his supporters vanished like smoke. But the most painful part for me wasn't watching him lose everything. It was discovering what he had planned all along. While sorting through our shared emails, I found a hidden folder he had never deleted, one filled with conversations he thought I'd never see. In one chain, dated only a few months before my father's death, he told a friend, "Once her old man kicks it, I'll be free to cash out. I've got a lawyer lined up. Prenup or not, I'll walk away clean." Another message read, "She won't know what hit her." He had been waiting for my father to die, waiting to take everything. All the charm, all the sweet words. It had all been fake. He was never building a life with me. He was building an exit strategy. I stared at those emails for a long time. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to disappear. But instead, I opened an anonymous email account, attached the files, and sent them to a financial journalist who had already been following the story. The article that came out a week later destroyed what little was left of his reputation. It revealed how he had manipulated his marriage, used my father's name, and planned to run the moment he got what he wanted. By the end of the month, his company was under investigation. His accounts were frozen and creditors were closing in. He tried to contact me, but I never answered. He thought he was the puppet master, pulling strings behind closed doors. But in the end, he tied the noose with his own hands. The day of the eviction was quiet, almost too quiet. I arrived at the condo in a simple black coat. No makeup, no drama, just calm. With me stood the building manager, a locksmith, and a sheriff. They all had copies of the court order, and I had the keys to the truth. When we got to the door, the manager looked at me one last time. "You're sure about this?" I nodded. The locksmith began his work, and within minutes, the lock clicked open. My home was mine again. My husband had no idea what was coming. He had been living there, parading around like he still had control, probably thinking I'd crawl back, beg, or break down. Instead, he opened the door and found the sheriff standing at his front step. His smile faded the moment he saw me. "What is this?" he said, looking around. "You need to leave," the sheriff said firmly. "You can't do this," he snapped. "This is my house." The sheriff pointed to the papers. "Actually, sir, the title proves otherwise. You have 30 minutes. He turned to me, eyes wild, voice shaking. "Baby, come on. Let's talk. We can fix this." I didn't say a word. I simply reached into my bag and handed him a manila envelope. He looked confused as he opened it. Inside were the divorce papers, full financial disclosures, and a motel keycard. His hands trembled. "A motel," he whispered. I finally looked him in the eye and said softly, "You thought you locked me out, but you were always the one who didn't belong here." He tried to speak again, to twist the story, to play the victim, but I turned and walked inside, closing the door behind me. That condo, once filled with lies and manipulation, felt peaceful for the first time in years. I didn't celebrate, didn't cry. I just stood there, breathing in the silence. He took everything for granted, thought he could take me for a fool. But now, all he had left was a cheap motel room and a broken illusion. And me? I had my home, my freedom, and finally, the last word. Months passed, and life slowly returned to normal. Except it wasn't the same. It was better. The condo, once filled with painful memories, was transformed. Every room was renovated, every corner redesigned. It no longer felt like a stage for lies. It felt like mine. And when the time was right, I sold it for $35 million. No hesitation, just closure. With part of the money, I did something my father would have been proud of. I opened a scholarship fund in his name for students from struggling families, young people with dreams but no resources. It felt right. He always believed in second chances and building from the ground up. It was a way to honor him without saying a word. My ex-husband, on the other hand, was still trying to clean up the mess he created. Lawsuits, debt collectors, public disgrace. Everything he once built was now ashes at his feet. And one morning, outside a courthouse where he was fighting yet another legal battle, our paths crossed. He stood there, older and smaller somehow, waiting with empty eyes and a wrinkled suit. As I walked past, he looked at me like he wanted to speak, but I didn't stop. I didn't need to. I had already said everything I needed to without opening my mouth, because sometimes revenge isn't loud, it doesn't scream, it doesn't destroy. Sometimes revenge is just giving someone exactly what they asked for and watching them realize it wasn't what they wanted at all. Do you think he got what he deserved, or do you think she went too far by staying silent and letting karma do the work? I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. And if stories like this keep you hooked, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next.